Right, hello grade 9s, and thought let's just put together a little video. You've got your feedback on your assignment itself that you've submitted, so on your own work. But here's just maybe a bit more slowly, fully worked through solutions for those quadratic equations. And some of them were a bit tricky because you had to rearrange it first, and then test your factorization, and then, yeah. So, first things first, maybe just a reminder of the structure, and I know we're getting into our routines of where everything is. So, everything we need should be in this equations part of the website. This top part is this PDF that I refer to that's embedded. So, this is what I scribbled down to start with, and then in the lesson you asked about something, so I scribbled down here so it's available to you. And then here's the scribbles from the video, and then the questions themselves. And then in this video, there were some questions that come up in that lesson. And then if you scroll down later, this will auto update with the video that I'm making right now and you're watching right now. So you can come back to this PDF and just look through that to see the work through solutions without having to scroll down and watch the video that's coming over here. And the picture one I'm going to embed here as soon as I'm done. Okay, so here it is. The 5 questions you're giving. X squared equals x plus 6. Okay, so let's run through what are we trying to do here. We see that there's a squared. And as soon as we see that it's an x squared somewhere along the way, it's useful to use this strategy. And our strategy is we're going to rearrange it so we've got kind of everything on one side equals 0. Okay, so we've got x squared equals x plus 6. So on this side, I'd like the equation to say equals 0. In other words, there shouldn't be an x and there shouldn't be a plus 6. So I'm going to need to subtract that x and I'm going to need to subtract 6 because x minus x plus 6 minus 6 gives us the 0. That golden rule of equations, whatever you do on one side, do on the other. So we're going to go minus x minus 6. So we've got x squared minus x minus 6. No like terms, we can't add anything. Okay, then we've got an x squared and we've got a trinomial. So we factorize highest common factor, difference of 2 squares, trinomial, and go, oh, trinomial, we go bracket, 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 still equals 0. And ask ourselves, how do we factorize this? Well, x times x gives us x squared. What times what gives us the 6, and then making sure that when we multiply to get the x's, we get a negative x. So I want to jump in straight away and say, well, if we had 6 and 1, it's not going to work. So let's just do one here to see one that won't work. So if we said x, x, and we said, oh, 6 and 1, we could multiply and we could get negative 6. So we could say negative 6 times positive 1. Looks like it should be fine. X times x gives us x squared. Good so far. X times 1 gives us 1x. Minus 6 times x gives us minus 6x, and minus 6 times positive 1 gives us negative 6. The x squared and the negative 6 are great. But what about these x's? What's 1x minus 6x? Well, it's 5x. Minus 5x at least. Well, that's not what we have in the middle. We've got minus 1x. So that doesn't work. And you could try and say, well, what happens if we had, let's just scroll up and have, okay, so what happens if instead of that we had a plus and a minus? So we had a plus and a minus. Well, that would mean that this would change to a minus, and this would be plus, and this would be plus 5x, still no good. So 6 and 1 isn't going to work. But if we factorize and went, okay, well, what about 3 and 2? 3 times 2 gives us 6. 1's going to have to be positive, 1 negative. Which way around? Well, we want a negative 3x plus 2x to give us our negative x. Okay, so once we've factorized it, we know that either this bracket should be 0, because then 0 times anything is 0, or this bracket here should be 0. Right, well, that's easy. This bracket, x minus 3, should be 0. Or this bracket, x plus 2, should be 0. And then just focus in on one equation at a time. So for this one, x minus 3 equals 0. plus 3 plus 3, and x equals 3. That makes sense. 3 minus 3 is 0. Or our second solution, looking at this equation, we could minus 2 minus 2. Reason being that x plus 2 minus 2 just gives us x, which is what we want to find. What is x? And 0 minus 2 is minus 2. Again, just looking back at this mini equation, minus 2 plus 2 does give us 0. So there are two solutions, and that's our process for each of these. Rearrange so it equals 0, factorize two solutions. Up to two solutions, I should say. Okay, so let's run through that for each of these. X squared minus 5x equals minus 6. So if you've got it, pause, relook at your other ones if you need to, but I'm going to really run through these. Also means, as I said, these solutions are up on the side so you can look through the worked solutions. Okay, I'm going to rearrange x squared minus 5x. I'm going to add 6 to both sides so that this side is 0. So 0 minus 6, if we plus 6, we'll get to 0. So therefore, I must do it on this side. Okay, this looks like a trinomial that I now must factorize into bracket, 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 bracket. X times x gives us x squared. I have the feeling that it's going to be 3 and 2. 3 times 2 gives us 6. And negative 3 times negative 2 gives us positive 6. And if I checked it, negative 3x minus 2x gives us the minus 5x we want. Cool. That means that there are two solutions. X minus 3 equals 0, or x minus 2 equals 0. Either that bracket equals 0 or that bracket. So x equals 3 or x equals 2. Okay, into the rhythm here. X squared plus 2x plus 1 equals 0. Cool. First step's done for us. There's no rearranging needed at all. So we've already got our equals 0, which is what we want. Okay, this looks like a trinomial. Bracket, 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 bracket. X times x gives us x squared. Don't really have too many options here. What times what gives you 1? Well, 1 times 1. Unless you're going to go 1 times a quarter. Oh, sorry, 4 times a quarter. But you're not going to get something like that. So plus 1 plus 1. So either that's 0 or that's 0. So let's just run through the motions here and try and make sense of it. So x plus 1 equals 0, or x plus 1 equals 0. So x equals minus 1, or x equals minus 1. So interestingly enough, that's why I keep saying up to two solutions. In this case, this is the same solution, x equals minus 1, or x equals minus 1. So there's only one solution, x equals minus 1. But we did have to factorize to see that. Okay, let's keep at it. 2x minus 1 equals x squared. This is going to be a goodie. And I'm going to solve it this way, although I would solve it the second way that I'll show you actually. I'm going to go, okay, well, we've been rearranging so that it goes equals 0. Great stuff. So we don't want this x squared, so we're going to subtract x squared. What you do on one side, do on the other. So we got 2x minus 1 minus x squared. This doesn't look like what we used to. But what we used to is having the x squareds at the beginning, and we can rearrange this equation. This is negative x squared, so there's nothing wrong with writing the negative x squared first. This is a positive 2x over here, so we could write the positive 2x. This is a negative 1 equals 0. Because it doesn't matter what order you add things. If you go 3 plus 2, it's the same as 2 plus 3. If you go negative x squared plus 2x, it's the same as 2x plus negative x squared. But we haven't factorized anything that has a negative over here, negative x squared. But we did have a strategy when we factorized these types of things. We turned it into this type of thing. So it was positive x squared, positive x squared. What can we multiply this by so that it is positive x squared? Well, couldn't we just multiply this by negative 1? Because negative 1 times negative x squared is just x squared. But we can't just do that to one term. We need to do it to the whole left-hand side. And we need to do it to the other side of the equation, but 0 times negative 1 is just 0. So we multiply by negative 1, and we multiply the whole thing. So positive 2x becomes negative 2x. Negative 1 becomes positive 1 because we've multiplied everything by negative 1. Okay, I'm going to pause and look at the other way. As I said, I might have done this to start with and said, instead of at the beginning subtracting x squared everywhere, why don't we subtract 2x and add 1? So that on the left-hand side, we've got 0. And on the right-hand side, we've still got our x squared. We have to subtract 2x, because we've done that to the left-hand side, so we need to do it to the right-hand side. We need to add 1, because we've done it on the left-hand side, so we need to do it to the right-hand side. And hey presto, these two equations are the same. It doesn't matter which way around it goes. And in either case now we're going to go, well, 0 equals, it's a trinomial, bracket, 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 bracket. It's a trinomial, bracket, bracket, equals 0. So it might be a nice little trick to go, well, the x squared, the positive x squared was on the right-hand side already. So if it's sitting on the right-hand side, why don't you rearrange so everything's on the right-hand side? Then you might not fall into a trap of maybe not multiplying the whole thing by negative. Doesn't really matter, but maybe just an idea. Either way, we've got to the same point. And we're going to go x, what times what gives you 1? Again, 1 times 1 gives you 1. But we want a negative 2x. So negative 1, negative 1. Let's just check it. X times, what do we got? X times negative 1 is negative 1x. Negative 1 times x is negative 1x. Negative 1x minus 1x minus 2x. Cool, we get that middle term. Cool, then we get our two solutions. But we can see where this is going from the previous question. X minus 1 equals 0, or x minus 1 equals 0. X equals 1. So only solution that's going to work for this. And next year you'll see why, because this is a parabola that touches the x-axis once. Never mind. You'll see it's going to turn into a nice pretty picture later. So let's get rid of our parabola so it's not there. Okay. Well, I think we got last question. 2 equals 3x minus x squared. Let's run through it both ways. Do we want our x squareds on the right-hand side, or do we want them on the left-hand side? We've got a negative x squared here. So I would tend to think, let's rearrange so we got the x squareds on the left-hand side. So if we add an x squared here, we're going to add an x squared here. We're going to subtract this 3x and subtract 3x. And then let's write it in the nice order that we like it straight away. We've got an x squared, a positive x squared. We've got a negative 3x, and we've got a positive 2. Equals 3x minus 3x, 0. Negative x squared plus x squared, 0. We're looking good. Bracket, 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 bracket equals 0. The other way would have been to say, well, we've got our 3x minus x squared, and why don't we subtract 2 from both sides? 0 minus 2. Then you've got a bit more work to do, because you must multiply this whole side by negative. Not too bad. Minus 3x. X squared becomes positive x squared. Negative 2 becomes positive 2. One extra step. Okay, x, what times what gives you 2? It's only really one option. 2 times 1. Negative 2 times negative 1 gives you positive 2. Negative 2x minus 1x gives you negative 3x. And let's just capture that. That plus that gives you the middle term. And therefore you got your two solutions. X minus 2 equals 0, or x minus 1 equals 0. So x equals 2, or x equals 1. Done. Love it.